This episode of the Linux Action Show is brought to you by the good-looking folks at GoDaddy.com. Use our code Linux and save yourself some cash. And welcome to the Linux Action Show, Season 22, Episode 3. My name is Chris.
My name is Matt.
Hey there, Matt.
Hey.
Hey, thanks for filling in for the B-Man this week.
Absolutely.
He's out sick, but that's all right. We got a great show. In fact, let's kick things off with the Runs Linux this week.
Sounds
the
like a plan.
new U.S. Navy ground control units to control naval drones run Linux.
Oh my goodness. You know, I have kind of a Star Wars flashback there. I'm picturing a whole different kind of drone, but this is actually an aerial drone, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's a helicopter one too, which is a kind of a new drone I've seen. Now, what's a little wild about this is, you'd think, okay, great, the U.S. Navy is going to run Linux. They're going to save themselves some cold cash, right?
Sure.
The whole contract is worth $27.8 million. Now, part of that is because it includes a transition to from an existing system to this Linux system, so they have to pay for that. But you're talking ground equipment, you're talking deployment. But
there's hardware.
$28 million for that
crazy.
big guy.
Well, and what's interesting about the Navy story is that they've done some Linux stuff in the past. I believe. I do believe
you are correct, sir. And so there's that. They already have some familiarity with Linux.
Yep.
The other thing that sort of pushed them towards this direction is there was a malware attack on the Air Force's Windows-based drone control systems last year. We actually covered that on TechSnap. So when the Navy was looking at this, they said, well, the Air Force guys had a malware attack because they were running Windows, so maybe we ought to,
Ooh, yeah. Because, you've got to envision you're running a drone and it blue screens, and that's not good for anybody, especially if it's flying over something critical.
Right, yeah.
That's not good.
No, you don't want your drone to blue screen. Well, we've got a big show today. Big show. Matt's got a how-to.
I do.
That how would you tease that?
Basically, let's just say it's a surprise. It's not terribly complex, but I think it's fun. It's a nice laid-back kind of how-to for a lazy Sunday.
It's a perfect lazy Sunday how-to. So that's he's going to do that one live with me since he's here today. Then at the end of the news segment, I'm going to make a big announcement for Jupiter Broadcasting. I decided to make it here on the big show because I'm really excited. Now, if you're already a subscriber to the Jupiter Signal, you will probably be getting a copy of it sometime tonight. It'll also have the big announcement in there. And also we've got app picks. I got an awesome Android pick.
Oh yeah.
But before we get to that, we need to say good morning to the fine folks over at GoDaddy.com and the beautiful Danica.
We're missing somebody.
It's Chris Patrick. And I'm here to tell you about the awesome GoDaddy deal that they're offering. For a limited time, it expires at the end of June.
Really?
The end of June. But if you want to get some cheap hosting to throw up a blog to see how it does, something like that, $1.99 hosting for 3 months if you use our code 199Linux when you check out.
$1.99, like as in $1.99.
$1.99 for 3 months. And you know what, man? It's cheap in price, but it's not cheap in terms of quality. Filterfree.me, my blog that we keep for the show, gets plenty of traffic every single day, and I've been rocking this thing with the back-end search database and all kinds of things. I deployed this on their cheapo hosting in like minutes. WordPress, MySQL, the latest version of the theme, everything just deployed from the GoDaddy control panel. Man, and to be able to do that for $1.99 a month, you cannot beat that kind of value.
Well, it seems responsive when I've visited the site. I've never had any problems.
No,
it loads right up. It's actually really it's really impressive. I was really impressed with that.
Thank you, sir. I was too. So use the code 199Linux when you check out to get that $1.99 hosting. Definitely. Or if you're just doing some general shopping, use our code Linux to save 10%. And thank you to GoDaddy for sponsoring this week's episode of the Linux Action Show. All right, Matt.
Alrighty.
Can I tell you about my Android pick?
Let's hear about your Android pick.
Well, since we've got a goofy how-to this week, I thought I would do a very intellectual Android pick.
It's a good offset.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
works.
It's a little,
that works.
Exactly. A little yin-yang there. So this one's called Enki Drawing. Of course, I obviously am very likely pronouncing that wrong. But this is a very, believe it or not, sophisticated flashcard program.
Interesting.
Recommended to me by some people in the chat room. Of course, I'm blanking on the name right now. Sorry. And it's not your average flashcard program. What's very cool about it is it comes with like something like 30,000 pre-made or 3,000 pre-made flashcards. And there's ones in there for Linux. You can teach yourself like Linux tricks and things like that.
cool.
It'll assemble stats like how long each flashcard took you, and it'll do progressive hopping around.
So there's a lot of customization.
The cards support HTML, so you could actually make your own. So I could make some for Dylan. Then you could upload it to their server and publish it to their directory, and then you just open up the app and search for it and pull down the flashcards. It's very, very cool. It's called Enki Droid Flashcards. It's a free app in the Android market.
Cool.
So yeah, you can do text, images, sounds, even latex in these cards. It has text-to-speech integration, 6,000 pre-made decks, detailed stats on every card. You can sync with their online service, and it's open source.
Unbelievable.
Plus, it's got another ton of great features. So I thought I'd pick this one because I don't know if you got a kid or you're trying to teach yourself something new. They've got ones in there for like training yourself on French. And all
nice. Well, it looks like they got a little video there to demo it out.
Oh,
so
yeah.
if you want to check it out before you install it, you can.
Totally can. Link in the show notes, and of course, also a link to all of the previous Android app picks. Thanks to Maggio. All right. Well, moving right along, it's time for our universal app pick this week. And because one of them is sort of, well, I'll be honest, it's the Jupiter Signal. So that's kind of a self-serving one.
Sure.
But I want to get you guys subscribed to the Jupiter Signal because that's where we're making big announcements that don't quite fit into the format of a show. Like the one I'm going to make today, but the one I'm going to make today is big enough that I'm going to make it in the show. But we have all kinds of things that are in there, including behind-the-scenes stories. So go check out the Jupiter Signal at bit.ly/Jupiter Signal. It's our monthly newsletter. Now, that's pick one, but because I did our own Jupiter Signal as...
And that link will be in the show notes, of course.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Because I was kind of a jerk, I also want to pick ChatZilla, which is a Firefox add-in, and specifically, I know there's a lot of people who complain the way our live stream is structured is the video's up top and the chat room's down below.
Right.
But the problem is the video's so high res that most screens can't really fit the video and the chat room right next to each other.
That's true. That's true.
So this Firefox plugin, ChatZilla, adds a nice IRC client built in to Firefox using the extension system.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So you could go to the live page, you can go to any live stream page and pull this up and bring it up in windowed mode.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all built into one thing. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
So I'll put a link to that in the chat room if anybody out there wants something
cool.
like that. Yeah, so check that out.
Definitely
it's a nice way to, or, heck, you could just use it with any IRC
I'm going to be
service.
installing that when I get home. I think that's cool.
Nice, man. Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
We've got a not-so-random Linux distribution pick. Now, I've talked about Sabayan on the show before. Sabayan.
There's no one way to pronounce it.
I try differently. Yeah, I figure eventually I'll throw 1,000 of them out there, and eventually
I butcher them all. I do. It happens.
This is a cool one that we have talked about on the show. This distribution it's Gen 2 sexed up. It's got a nice GUI on top. It comes a lot of 3D acceleration, a lot of apps, and they've released version 9.
Okay.
And the thing I want to mention about version 9 is they call it now based on Gen 2 hardened, which is interesting. But they're using a new app. They've bundled a new app called the Rego Application Browser. During this release cycle, they've included the application browser, which is a graphical front end to the Portage backend.
Oh, wow.
So you can go through there and search for things in the Portage trees and then deploy them on your machine.
Oh, no, I'm liking that already.
Yeah. So it's got a lot of features. Cool. It's not quite there. It's also being written in GTK3. Here's the other one, which I think Alan from TechSnap would like this one.
Oh, yeah.
Preview support of ZFS.
Absolutely.
So now you can do ZFS support in Sabayan. And then, one last thing, if you've got more than 4 gigs of RAM, but for whatever reason you're sticking with 32-bit Linux.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know, maybe you need something.
Some people do.
PayAE support, which has actually been around for Linux for a long time, but now they've made it really easy. I guess it might just even auto turn on, built in now to the kernel that ships with Sabayan.
That's pretty cool.
Of course, also rocking the latest versions of GNOME, KDE, and XFCE.
I like that. And one thing for the viewers at home, you mentioned hardened. If my memory serves, that basically is a security term if you wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of effort has been put into securing the base system packages, introducing Gen 2 hardened profile into the Sabayan ecosystem. So on Gen 2, this is one of the things that Gen 2 is focused on, is if you want to deploy Gen 2 as a server, which I have done, if you can believe that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And one of the things Gen 2 is always really awesome about is there is a very security conscious community around Gen 2, and they've actually built up a set of pre-standard hardening practices and scripts that you can actually use. And
cool.
So Sabayan followed those practices, installed those patches, made those changes, and now they can be considered a Gen 2 hardened distribution.
Oh, that's super.
Yeah.
Well, and I love the fact that they're really kind of pushing the envelope, but using Gen 2, which is always awesome.
Like chat room says 32-bit for the lose. I don't know.
Well, I mean, okay, I have a couple of 64-bit machines. Obviously, I have the System 76 machine, which is 64-bit, but I also have a few other ones myself, and I have some 32s as well. It just really depends on what you're running. I mean, it depends on the architecture, what you're working with. Sometimes that's just what you're going to use.
Yeah.
Not everything's going to be 64.
On a true 64-bit system, you never escape some sort of 32-bit app. It's like
Generally.
either be it Flash.
Although I would say that there was a time it was painful, but nowadays
it's way smoother.
It's just I thus far, and I've been trying. I really been trying. I've not been able to discover some of those challenges I had before. I was pretty excited about it. So
that's good.
Yeah.
I remember when it really first started to become available to Linux users to choose to either download the 32-bit distro or download the 64-bit distro. Right. I remember there was actually like a thought process I would have there. And now it's like, I'd have to kind of debate. Now it's like, I just grab the x64.
Well, and for me, I would actually Google what was the latest complaint on Flash or whatever it may be. Was there an issue? That was the biggest challenge I had way back when. But nowadays, it's just, well, of course, Flash is a mood issue anyway.
Mostly.
But yeah, I mean, it's becoming a mood issue whether we want it to be or not.
We want it to be.
But no, I mean, I'm saying you're going to be going Chrome or you're going to be using older stuff in Firefox. But either way, it's really just not an issue. The software is all the same. Pretty much everybody it's doing the dev packages or, for Ubuntu.
And people get mocked now if they release software that doesn't run on 64-bit. I mean, you just don't want to be embarrassed like that as a developer anymore.
No. Yeah. Especially a new computer. Older computers, 32 is fine. Newer computers, you're doing 64.
For me, do I have more than 4 gigs of RAM?
Yeah.
Yes or no?
Yeah.
And it's like a 1-0
You want to take advantage of those resources.
Right. But, just not to stretch this out any further, but the PAE support and the Gen 2 hardened support, both to me speak more towards server applications because I have had servers that have been deployed 32-bit.
Wow.
This is a while ago. This wouldn't be like a common scenario, but I actually have a client that has machines that were deployed in 2007 and 2010 that are 32-bit. That now have had more RAM added to them and need PAE just to go just to utilize that memory. And it's kind of kludgy, but it works. So.
Right, exactly.
All right, well, I think that's enough discussion about memory, Matt. Let's do the news.
What's new in the news?
All right, Matt, our first story on the news docket's a good one. Samsung joins the Linux Foundation with a premier subscription investment at $500,000.
Whoa!
Samsung just sunk in, and Matt, that's an annual fee that they're going to pay.
Oh, so this is an ongoing thing for them. That's commitment.
Now, of course, everybody, I think nowadays, I mean, I used to think of like TVs when I thought of Samsung and stuff, but now I think more like, the Samsung Galaxy phones and things like that.
They're big and mobile.
The $500,000 annual investment is necessary to be considered a platinum member of the Linux Foundation. And of course, Samsung came out and said the Linux Foundation is an important organizon. Oh, that's nice of them. That's good. I'm glad they didn't spend money on something that's not important. He said this is Wanju Park, the vice president of Samsung Electronics, and in the official announcement, he said it brings the right people and right resources together to help companies and developers advance Linux for everyone. I bet he had more of an accent than I just.
Perhaps, but it's very possible, but I definitely agree with this point.
He said, we're looking forward to increasing collaboration and support for our growing portfolio of Linux-based devices and making contributions that advance Linux for all.
Nice. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Speaking as a community member, that's awesome.
I guess they are also working on, or at least they mentioned they're continuing their efforts on Tizen too, or Tizen. Yeah, so, very awesome from Samsung. I mean, I like to see this because Android, Linux-based.
It's a big deal.
And that's what's paying their bills these days.
Yes, it is.
So it's good to see them. It's good to see them recognize that.
Absolutely.
All right.
It's good stuff.
Let's talk about something else that's a good sign. I thought this was really awesome. Almost 10,000 Humble Bundle sold via the Ubuntu store in 72 hours. 10,000.
Nice.
Humble Bundles.
Nice.
When you combine this kind of statistic with the statistics in the sales ratio, how the Linux users always pay more. Sure. In fact, they say right here, this is coming from Ubuntu developer David Planella, combine the download figures, the fact that Linux users donate more on average for the games, and the features of the Ubuntu Software Center, this is another confirmation that Ubuntu is an exciting platform for delivering games to users.
Well, and I think it's a unification thing. I don't think it's so much that honestly, I don't think game makers have so much a preference, just that they want a something they can scale this out on, and that they know it's going to be a reliable experience releases down the road.
I am tempted to buy through the Ubuntu Software Center just so I can watch how they manage updates.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Because if they're updating the Humble Bundle games, like they're giving you a repo. If anybody who's bought those and is watching the show,
interesting to see.
It'd be interesting to know how that works. Here's the part that kind of bugs me though, is the verbiage in this press release, and I realize this is because it's through the Ubuntu Software Center store, but it still kind of rubs me the wrong way when he says this is another confirmation that Ubuntu is an exciting platform for delivering games to users. Because I don't think he gets to claim that it demonstrates Ubuntu's success if he's also using the same stat of the sales figures, because those sales figures where they donated more were for all Linux users, not just Ubuntu users.
They were, but they're also dealing with a bigger issue in that we're going to come a time, honestly, I believe this, that more people are going to know the word Ubuntu than they will Linux. And I know that angers a lot of people, and I understand that, and I'm kind of I'm in somewhat agreement of that. But the point is just that it's just basically they need a face for Linux, and that's what Ubuntu has become. So if they're by making that statement, I think that's kind of what they're doing.
They, as in consumers, need like
consumers
a brand.
Consumers, and also just pretty much anyone involved, whether it's the guys making the games or the guys buying them. I think
that's interesting. Brand, because it's if people that don't really know about something, they will trust something a lot more if it's a recognizable brand.
You bet. Go ask a young person what they're listening to their music on. I don't care if they own what kind of MP3 player they own. They're gonna call it their iPod. There's certain branding and labeling that happens.
Do you think Canonical could achieve this kind of recognition? And instead of saying Ubuntu is a platform for games, they could have said Linux is a platform for games. Because aren't they still furthering the Ubuntu brand?
They are. I would personally be more. I would perhaps say Ubuntu Linux or something along that variation.
There you go.
Because that way it's because if you really want to get down to brass tacks, Linux to a lot of folks is a kernel, and then of course you have distributions of that.
So then what it really
with other desktop environments, and it gets really convoluted. Quick,
so what you really want is Ubuntu or you want Ubuntu GNU /Linux.
Sure, there you go. It works for me.
Anyway, that's cool. I'm glad to see the app market's taking off, especially since Click and Run has had some bit of a bumpy ride on and off.
It has.
And now that you see the Ubuntu store sort of taking another stab at this approach to actually see it being successful. And there's other games, too, that I've been seeing reporting that are selling very well through there as well.
Yeah, they've had a lot of success. It's exciting. It's interesting to see how they've taken something that past distributions such as Linspire have done and kind of put their own take on it. And frankly, I think do it better in a lot of ways.
Possibly, yeah.
Certain ways. I'm not going to get into brass tacks on that, but basically,
it works. Right?
Yeah, it works, and it gets you what you want, so it's fine.
Let's keep talking about Canonical for a bit. All right. And then this will lead us into a SUSE story, which leads us into a Microsoft story. They're all linked together, so get ready for the ride, Matt. Canonical is touting its new partnership with Microsoft, is the headline over at Phronix News. This is an announcement from Canonical. Now, last week we talked about what was last week's big? Oh yeah, Fedora striking up is cutting VeriSign a check for secure boot. This is not like that. Yeah. This is actually setting it up so that way Ubuntu long-term support 12.04 can easily be deployed on the Windows Azure cloud infrastructure. Sort of like Amazon's EC2 system.
I have no problem with that. I mean, that's a win. If someone wants to do that, cool.
And Ubuntu in here is touting the fact that they will be, supporting it. In fact, through their commercial support offering. In fact, they even over here on their blog. I thought this is funny because, we deal with Ubuntu a lot and Canonical a lot from a consumer perspective.
We do.
Now watching them play in the enterprise space, you sort of notice how their vernacular changes. Here you go. Ubuntu Advantage provides mission-critical support along with capabilities for automating and managing your Ubuntu environment. If you want to create applications and scale them as you go, the hourly support option could be just what you're looking for.
Oh, I love it. And you got to love the radio show voice because that's true. They go into PR mode instantly. As soon as they're dealing with that.
But
happens.
This is a platform, just like EC2 is, for them to sell support services around Linux, and that's really what this is. And of course, SUSE, not wanting to sit one out on the sidelines, also announced that SUSE Enterprise server will be available to deploy on Windows Azure.
Wow. Okay, so this is clearly a big move for a lot of different distributions. This is great. Well, this is cool. I mean, it's cool from the fact that it's okay. I mean, I'm not saying people should rush out and do this. I'm saying that Microsoft's acknowledging the fact that this is happening.
It's very good that Microsoft is not building an Azure cloud that only runs Windows.
Oh, they'd be shooting themselves in the foot. I think
that's what it is now.
I think Zune and a few other things have definitely taught them that lesson. So,
and people that want scalability want things like Nginx. They want resources that Linux provides them that aren't available in the Windows platform, and
they don't do locked-in ecosystems very well, at least in my opinion, and at least in this space especially. And so I think this is a good thing for them. I think it's definitely looking to the future, gives them some options, and with that whole open source initiative thing they did recently with that new company, I can't think of the name of it.
Oh yeah, Nuco or something.
Yeah,
something really generic,
some generic-y thing they came up with. They're definitely trying to get into the open source space, and I think this is basically jumping on board with that. So that's cool.
It's money in these guys' pockets.
Whatever.
I don't want to see Azure take the lead.
Won't happen.
And I agree.
It's just not going to happen.
I totally agree, and that's why it doesn't bother me that much. Because at the end of the day, I think Azure will be the third tier cloud. Because you got Rackspace, who's huge in that. You got EC2,
late to the game. I mean, it's cool, but it's late to the game.
Yeah,
it just is.
Yeah.
There's no defining reason why I would dump what I'm using now and jump over to that I know of.
If you've built internally on some sort of Microsoft technology platform, like the bank that I worked at for years, was all built on top of ASP, IIS, and Microsoft SQL.
Yep, and I work for a company that's very much a Microsoft shop.
And if you want to take that and put that in the cloud, so that way you get the infinite scalability.
Yeah,
that's
certainly one way to do it, and then that's cool. Then it makes sense. But I think that for someone that's already on a Linux solution and they're happy with it, I don't really see any real jump from there. I don't think it'll happen.
Here is Brian and I've talked about this a lot, and it's one of the things that I think makes SUSE a competitive in a big way compared to the other distros. That's SUSE Studio. So they are integrating SUSE Studio with Azure. So you can go into SUSE Studio, you can customize a build of SUSE Linux Enterprise Server to include certain packages. Maybe you want this version of this app or something.
I like it.
Then there's just a deploy this to Azure option.
I like that. So it's wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, get it out the door.
And when you do that, you still are getting this. SUSE will include the automatic maintenance package that keeps SUSE Enterprise up to date, including security patches and bug fixes. And people want to check it out. There's a preview right now where you get here's a discounted hourly rate. This is interesting. Discounted hourly rates for SUSE virtual machines are ranging from 0.013 cents an hour to up to 64 cents an hour, depending on the instance size.
That's quite a scale.
64 cents an hour isn't bad, but you figure that's a discounted rate.
It is, yeah. So it kind of makes you wonder what the other rate is.
I've been bitten by that. I did an EC2 instance, ran it for a month without really doing much, and it was like just the base rate was like $220.
You got to watch those numbers because they will bite you.
Yeah. But good for these guys.
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah, that's cool.
Now, the last Microsoft story to round us through this trio is one that I actually didn't expect to see a headline for. Microsoft hosts GNOME and Mono Festival of Love. Now, I don't know, man. I feel like the boat on Mono has sailed.
It's totally sailed. I mean, it's a done deal, and more, and of course, involving that, there's other aspects of Mono, such as what was it, Moonlight? I think. Other similar projects.
Moonlight has been axed.
So Mono, I think, is probably next to go. Yeah.
Well, Microsoft just loves themselves some Mono, dude. They just I don't know. So Microsoft is holding, get ready for the name, the Nerd Conference in Boston. This will be on June 4th. I know. It's the GNOME and Mono Festival of Love, and it'll be held from June, the 26th of June to the 2nd of July, so it hasn't kicked off yet. Among the goals for this will be the GNOME Mono is going to be among the goals is an implementation of the new Tomboy library, which, Tomboy kind of seems like its day has sailed.
Yeah.
Porting Banshee to GNOME 3, print improvements for GNOME 3, FSpot improvements, which is a C# app, and debating the future of GTK Sharp.
Well, here's my take on it. It doesn't matter what you're working with. So Mono and this sort of thing. Now, to my understanding, Banshee, of course, is a Mono type situation, and I like Banshee.
I do like Banshee too.
So I think that the Mono celebration. Honestly, a lot of people hate it. Cool. A lot of people like it. Cool.
Here's my
whatever works for you.
When I was using FSpot, Tomboy, and Banshee, then having Mono and all of its stuff made sense, and I was very for it.
Right. So it was very app centric,
but
very app
with Shotwell and Rhythmbox.
Right.
And even like Gnote. And I just stopped using the note system. I just use text files now.
And the only Mono app I'm using now, I think, is Banshee. I don't think I'm using anything else.
Now I'm kind of like exactly. That ship is sailing for me a little bit.
So I could go back to something else for sure.
Let's talk about something that's hot.
Let's talk about something
Diablo.
cool.
Diablo 3 is hot, and in true open source spirit. And actually, when I first saw this, I was kind of like, well, screw you guys. You guys are just copying Diablo. But then I thought about it, I thought, no, this is awesome. It's called Holy Spirit. And I saw this one in the Linux Action Show subreddit this week, and I just had to throw this in here.
Oh, yeah.
A free open source Diablo-like clone RPG. Here, I'll go down to the video for you.
Yeah, let's check this out.
I'll warn you, before I get you guys all excited about this, Holy Spirit is still in the early stages. And on top of that, it's a little rough to install. If you've got Ubuntu, they have some packages you can install, and then you build it from source.
Oh wow!
If you're on another distro or you don't want to do the source building thing, they have a French installer that you can download. It's old, but it will then auto update to the latest version.
And so is the installer a shell script, or is it like a little bin file or something?
I think the downloader is like essentially a shell script, maybe with a GUI on top.
Right. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So anyway, it's something that's basically an auto magically install it on your system kind of deal.
But if you know Diablo, you know this game, and it's it's got multiplayer support. It honestly looks pretty good.
Yeah. I was gonna say this isn't bad.
So I didn't have enough time this morning because I saw this on the Reddit last night. I wanted to load it up, but I wanted to try the build it from source route, and I didn't know how long that was going to take, so I opted not. But I'm showing a video of it here, and I'm telling you, after the show, after I get today's show published, I think this is how I'm screwing off tonight.
He's going to be playing it. Yeah. He's going to be all over this.
So check out Holy Spirit. It is not the religious kind. It is the Diablo clone kind, and it's they got a good write-up over on Ubuntu Vibes. And I don't know. I mean, I've been really wanting to play Diablo 3, but I can't really spend the money on it.
Sure.
And,
well, this might be a nice kind of go-between, a little bit of a...
Maybe.
Yeah, it could be fun. It may suck. I don't know.
Yeah.
I might have to try it to be sure, but it looks cool. I mean, based on what I'm seeing.
Another game that I just want to give a mention to, because I've heard of this one too before, is Summoning Wars, which is also an open-source role-playing game that also kind of reminds me a lot of Diablo.
It does. Yeah.
So you might check that out too. It's also kind of hard to get installed, but,
Looks cool.
Yeah.
Looks cool.
Summoning Wars, I think, doesn't look quite as polished.
It's not as polished, but sometimes there's
other elements.
Yeah, there's there's an element there. It's kind of cool to play with.
Sometimes it's more about the game's personality.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
she's got that game has a beautiful personality, man.
Exactly.
All right, while we're talking about games, one of the things we've gotten a lot of flack for right here on this very podcast is why aren't you guys talking about these Valve stories?
Oh.
And honestly, it's because everybody wants Steam super hard. Even Richard Stallman wants Steam to come to Linux.
Oh, sure.
I don't want to cover something that's not true. And
right.
The Fronix guys have been talking about this for a while,
and you don't want to look back at your past shows and think, man, why did I fall for that?
Why did I waste time on that? But here's where it's at. Just because enough has now progressed that I want to update everybody is Fronix has been following the story for a while. Including they have links to screenshots of spots of Steam working.
Interesting.
I don't know why Valve wouldn't at least be working on this, and they've had positions open.
I've seen that we're hiring for so and so and such and such.
Why not?
It seems like they're. Even if you're hiring, doesn't that indicate you're at least exploring the possibility? Right?
Well, I've also heard rumors that Valve is working on a hardware device, and that could be Linux.
Now that would actually make a lot of sense.
But
that could.
That
might be what.
Here's the latest fuel that's been thrown on this fire. Is Fronix has a screenshot here of an email that says yes. It's just in quotes, and this is from Gabe at Valve, who is the. He's it's like head developer. He's the CEO over at Valve. I can't remember.
Sure.
Gabe Newell of Valve. Anyways, below is a screenshot that says yes. Will the Linux version of Steam Client be released to the public before this year's end? He writes back yes.
That's incredible. Yeah. Well, it's a screen capture of an email, so take it. But then again, if you're a website that's doing news, that's putting this up there and giving any credibility to this, you're kind of I'm going to say it's probably legit.
You think?
I think it's probably legit. I think there's enough traction happening behind the scenes that they probably realize it. It's going to happen. It just needs to.
It's very likely it could have been, if it is true, they could have been working on it.
Sure.
For years. Valve is kind of like Valve falls, like the chat room says. Valve follows Valve time.
They do. Well, and I think also they're looking at timing based on the Humble Indie Bundle and things of that sort. They're looking at all this traction taking place in Linux gaming right now and realizing, who'd have thunk it? There's a market here.
True.
And it's been tested for us at some basic level. It's no longer a total crapshoot.
Right.
So,
right. Yeah. Maybe you're right there.
I think I'm looking at this strictly from a greedy business point of view, and I honestly, if it was my business,
I want to see how it does.
Why not corner it?
And the other thing
why not corner it?
Valve in the last couple of years retooled a lot of the Steam engine, the back end, gaming technology, to work on the Mac.
Okay.
And when they did that, I got to assume they probably made modifications to just. I think what Valve wants to do is turn Steam into a platform that deploys games to the Mac, to Windows, to the PS3, and to Linux. I think they want to
more money in
all
their
of
pocket.
Those.
It just makes sense.
Yeah. And if they can write some sort of universal back-end engine that the gamers with obviously some code changes on their end, but can utilize to hit those target platforms, could be really big.
Be cool if it happens.
Another thing that would be cool if it happens is this trend that developers are getting funded to go open source.
Oh,
this is our last story before my big announcement, and this keys off from the B-Man last week. We got talking about Brian's efforts to go donation based for to open source his apps.
Big step. It's speaking as a guy that works from home. I think people fail to realize just how big of a step that is for him to do, or anyone to do.
Oh yeah.
That you're no longer saying, okay, I know that every 2 weeks I'm going to get a paycheck cut. It's totally up in the air. So that's a big step.
As someone else who takes donations to sponsor the network, one of the things that's very real about it is human nature is to be led a little bit by where the money comes from.
True.
And if the money comes from the people who are actually watching the shows directly, or in Brian's case, people who are using the software directly, if they cut off funding or they add funding when something's done, no amount of emails that say something or tweets can also drive home the way funding changes.
Oh yeah, no, it's not, and it's not a good versus evil kind of thing. It's a pay my bills kind of thing.
Right.
I mean, that's really what it is.
So
for folks.
Brian, shortly after Monday, Last really hits big on Monday, and then Brian hit his 4,000 donation goal, which is awesome.
Awesome.
Another guy out there who's kind of following in Brian's lead is the Part Image developer, the Parted Magic developer. Parted D Magic, or Part D Magic, however you want to say it, is a fantastic tool. Patrick Werner, he's only trying to reach $1,200 per month in donations to pay bills and cover life's other surprises.
Not very much.
I know. I think people.
Well, he may be minimalist, and I know people that are in that space, and if they can make that work,
maybe he doesn't have a mortgage.
It's very possible. He may lead a very minimalist lifestyle, and I know a lot of folks that do and live very well that way, and that's cool.
And it could be honestly, after reading through, because he says one of the things here. He says if he's going to keep working until he goes broke, basically. And I kind of grok him, like, essentially, since I went full time, I don't think I've ever really made money in a month. I personally fund the continuation of this network to about the tune of $1,000 personally every month.
Wow. Okay.
And when I don't have another source of income, that's only going to last for so long. Though I'm hoping that changes, right?
Sure.
And but the reward in working for yourself and producing what you believe is important and producing content directly for the end people is worth that sacrifice to me. Especially if I think there's a light at the end of the tunnel I can reach. I think both Patrick here and Brian are kind of going that same route. And now Brian's basically made a blog post that says, "All right, now that I'm public funded, tell me what you want to do. Tell me what you want me to work on." So he's made a few posts over at lunduke.com. You can check those out. And go also check out Patrick Werner from Parted Magic. I support both these guys because I strive to do something similar.
I think it's brave. It's one thing to talk about; it's another thing to do it. And it just blows my mind that they're able to. And of course, Brian being able to do that, and this guy clearly taking his approach to it. I am concerned that basically equates to what, $7.25 an hour for this individual. That I'm not sure that he's. I don't know. I mean, how far does that scale? How long does that become realistic? And does that put the software in jeopardy from development from him? Does that mean we're going to have to rely on someone else to take over later on?
Yeah.
It's, I don't know.
We'll see. It really depends on his personal situation.
Yeah. But hey, more power to them. I think that's awesome. I think that's awesome. So,
all right, Matt, should we talk about something else that's equally or maybe even more so awesome and maybe even going to solve down the road part of my funding problem? It's my big announcement. Are you ready?
I am definitely ready.
All right. Well, I'm very excited to announce that starting Monday morning and then officially available every Tuesday morning at Jupiter Broadcasting, a brand new show called Coder Radio launches.
Nice.
Which will be hosted by myself and co-hosted, primarily hosted by somebody new. His name is Michael Dominic.
Okay.
And he's a software developer. He's got a deep background in open source. Wow, he works with clients and does a lot of contract work too, and often works with his clients to go open source.
Okay. Right.
And we're gonna have a podcast that is a weekly podcast. Very excited, called Coder Radio. Oh man, Matt, we've got so many great ideas. I can't even wait to get started. It's going to be a weekly talk show taking a pragmatic look at the art and business of software development and the related technologies. It'll be live at Mondays, 9 a.m. Pacific, and then released for download a few hours after that. So Tuesday mornings, it's always safe to go get it. And we're going to call it Coder Radio. It will be an audio podcast. We will have a visual version available, but we've got so many great ideas. So coming up, within the next few weeks, you've got Google I/O. We'll be over Google I/O. We've got WWDC. If there's anything of interest that does come out, we'll talk about it. Tons of things that I think will be very applicable to both the TechSnap and Linux Action Show audience. So it's a new show, Coder Radio, all about software development. If you're a software developer, if you've been interested in software development, curious, all those kinds of things, check it out.
Nice. That's awesome. That is really cool. Well, and I think you touched on something. You mentioned that you're going to be talking about the business side of it too, and I think that's something that people, even occasionally.
Michael is really this is what he does full time is software development.
That's
he does it.
Nice.
He releases his own apps. He does it for clients, and so he manages sort of a software development consulting business. Also, he manages his own applications. So he's got a lot of experience, and he's got a lot of different angles to look at it. And I just thought...
That's cool. And I think the way they intersect with, the actual development of the software as well as the business side and how they interlink, I think that's going to be exciting to hear.
And more developers are becoming their own full-time developers, either through the routes, like we're in the first episode, we're going to talk a little bit about different routes people take. But we just did. And we just talked about open source development getting funded by donations.
Right.
You've got the app stores like the Android Market and the iTunes Store that are making developers profits that would have in the past never been able to support themselves.
So monetization, distribution, all these different facets.
And all of these people that are new to it that now need to know how to run this stuff because Michael's been doing this for a little while now.
Right.
So he's got a lot of experience, trials and errors and stuff like that.
So you're able to tap into his experience with every episode. That's really cool.
I'm very excited. So really Coder Radio. If you can't catch it live Monday morning, just grab it Tuesday morning. We'll have it out early so that way you can grab it for your commute or something like that.
I like that. I think that's fantastic.
Thank you, sir. Well, I'm very excited to check out Coder Radio. That'll be available late Monday evening, Tuesday morning over at JupiterBroadcasting.com. All right, Matt. Well, that's all the news for this week. Matt's here, and we're going to do a how-to live this week. That's why if you're watching the video version, that's why we've changed spots.
We're going to mix it up a little bit. Yeah. Just a little bit of a go back and forth here. So
now you and I were chatting, and I said, Matt, back when I was a kid,
back when you were a kid,
I would write notes to girls or maybe, leave little prank letters, but I was never very creative about it. Because, in Linux, it was difficult to accomplish some of these more trickier things that I wanted to do.
Oh, yeah. Love letters and V.
Yeah. Or just a grocery shopping list, something like that.
Exactly.
So you got a how-to this week that's going to make me look fancier.
It is certainly going to make you look fancier and perhaps even a little stalkerish. It's definitely. It's kind of on the border there, but basically, look, everybody and their mother knows how to install fonts on Ubuntu. It's not rocket science. It's basically, use your package manager and install fonts. But the fonts they provide you are, they're good. There's the Liberation fonts. There's the Microsoft True fonts.
True Types.
Yeah, True Types. Whatever it is.
They're okay.
Well, with their fancy speak and all that. And that's great. But they're lacking some pizzazz.
Right.
They're just not really
working. And there's so many good fonts online.
Oh, yeah. Well, and there's another myth that you have to always buy new fonts if you're getting them elsewhere. Actually, there is a source to where you can get fonts for free.
Ooh, yeah, you're talking about datfont.com.
Yeah, it's exactly what I'm talking about. And the font that I'm speaking of specifically is called PR something creepy.
Yeah.
Uniseal.
I thought at first when I read that, I said Uncle Creepy, and I thought, now that is a really creepy name.
Well, and you can probably, to a degree, create a font called Uncle Creepy.
Oh, I think so, yeah.
Uncle Creepy. But yeah, this is definitely a creepy font. And if you can see it here on the screen, this is what we're going to install to run in LibreOffice Writer so that you can write in really awesome looking resume or how-to or whatever you want. It definitely will make an impression. A ransom note, absolutely. Someone dings your car.
For you audio listeners, if this font was red, it would look like it was dripping in blood. That's how creepy it is. It's very
absolutely
creepy.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and we'll actually make sure it is in red for the video viewers.
All right. So once I find this font and I download it,
we're gonna go.
Where do I go from there?
So let's go ahead and get to that point here. I
think it's over there. Yeah, it's right there.
Downloader. Okay.
Yep.
So we're going to download it. I'm going to end up saving this to my downloads folder. So I'm going to go do that. Yeah. And for audio listeners and those watching, you'll note that, hey, Matt, you're not doing any of this in the terminal. That is true. I will provide the terminal how-to. However, it's just a lot faster. And frankly, for newbies, this is a lot friendlier.
But the links will be in the show notes.
Absolutely. I will show you both the...
before you go too far, bring up that desktop presenter and turn on the 3D support so that way they can see the screen if we still have that going. Yeah, right there you go. Click that guy. There we go.
There we go.
All right, so Matt's downloaded this font, and he saved it to his downloads folder where Firefox puts it, obviously.
Yep.
Okay.
So it is right there. I'm going to then, for newbies, right-click on it. And I'm going to choose Extract here. And, of course, we can do this via the terminal, and we'll do that in the show notes, but we're going to do this the easy way. So, all right, so that's all good to go. Now I am all set there.
Okay.
I have it in my downloads folder. Now the next step that I'm going to do after that is I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to get into where the fonts are stored.
Okay. So you're doing a sudo Nautilus command. So you're launching Nautilus as root, and you're specifying a path that says open Nautilus as root at this location.
Exactly. And by doing that, it allows me to have permissions to drop this into something that I otherwise would not.
So this is a nice way to be able to move files around as root.
Exactly.
Yeah, in the GUI. I like that. I usually just sudo cp, but...
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I would do. But again, I'm gonna do that in the show notes. But you can, as far as making directories and CP and all that good stuff.
I mean, like if you've been successful at getting mom or dad to use Linux, you don't want to send them terminal commands to install fonts.
Especially if you're trying to get mom and dad to install fonts in this fashion. This is going to be a lot easier to duplicate because there's lots of things in front of them.
So it's opened up user share fonts true type. So that's where the system true type fonts go.
Exactly. So I'm going to grab that little font folder that I extracted in my downloads folder, and I'm going to drop it into true type.
Oh, okay. So you can actually drag the whole folder over.
Okay. It's wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. It's super easy.
That's nice.
So we're going to go ahead and then close our true type folder. I'm going to close my downloads folder. I am then going to do a command that is basically going to refresh the font cache.
Yeah, the fc cache command, and then you can do a command there to freshen, and then you're also doing a verbose command so you can see the output.
Exactly, and I like to see the output simply because if there's an error, you'll know about it and you can address it.
This font blew up your system. That kind
of thing. It's all this exactly. Yeah. So we're going to hit enter on that, and it's going to do a whole bunch of verbose stuff.
Oh yeah, there it goes. Going through and preloading them and whatever doing.
And you can see at the bottom for the video viewers that it's cleaned the cache directory. All succeeded. Good. Happy doopy doopy. Okay, whoop-de-doo. All right, so now we're going to jump in to LibreWriter, and we're going to enjoy the fruits of our labor.
Oh, okay.
This is the part where it's like, okay, I installed a font, big deal, who cares? Well, this is where you have some fun. First of all, let's make this font really big. Then let's pick something. Let's see. It's going to be PR.
Yep, there it is, right there.
PR creepy. Now you have a few different creepy options with the font that I installed.
Right, because those are all presumably different ones that were in the folder.
They are. The only two that I really saw a difference was with the narrow and the standard. But we'll just go with standard. Yeah. And of course, you can't have a creepy font without red.
See what I'm saying,
Mom?
Oh my gosh.
I wanted to. So as you can see, you can definitely, or you can, dear lady, I mean, you can, whatever.
That really is, though, a super painless process to loading fonts. So when you go which there are so many good fonts at Dat Font, and then really,
it's just wrong
the meat of your process there is making sure you give yourself root permissions and you put it in the right directory and then clearing the font cache.
Exactly. And you can install a ton of free awesome fonts that you will not find in the repositories that you don't have to pay for.
That's very true. As I've gone around and gotten fonts for different shows and stuff like that. In fact, I think the Coder Radio font came from Dat Font.
More than likely. So most of the really cool creator fonts are from there. So, you can definitely write anything you want. It's right there for you. It's super easy to do, and it will instantly, once you refresh that cache, appear in software such as LibreOffice Writer.
There you go. And notes to instructions to doing the command line and stuff like that are available in the show notes. Oh, I want to do it. Back to you guys. And that brings us to the end of this week's episode of the Linux Action Show. Matt, thank you for sitting in for the B-Man.
Happy to stop by and lend a hand.
Big week over at Jupiter Broadcasting. I already mentioned Coder Radio. We're super excited about that. Also, the new Unfilter show is rocking unbelievably strong. People love the show. It's definitely the most successful launch of a show that the network's ever had. If you haven't watched it yet, episode 4 of Unfilter is on private prisons. How private prisons make their profit and why just the existence of private prisons and the way that their business model works drives more and more policy to throw more and more people into prison.
Interesting.
It's a heavy episode, but we light it up with a few things. Also, if you're interested in some pretty tough questions for the Federal Reserve, those things are in there, as well as drone updates. Drones being used for local law enforcement and things like that. Check that out. Episode 4 of Unfiltered.
Interesting stuff.
I'm very proud of those 4 episodes. Very good 4 episodes. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Also, you can check out the network over on Google+. I haven't mentioned that in a while, but you can just find Jupiter Broadcasting. It's also linked in the show notes. That's where we make announcements for new show releases. And
you can interact with us a lot there too.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. Yep, you and I are all over Google+.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
We have links to your Google+ profile in there as well, and mine.
Check that out.
Now, I had planned to read an email this week.
Oh, you had?
But
How'd that work out for
I've been working behind the scenes like a madman on getting, because I wanted Quarter Radio to be totally just ready when I announce it. It's the first time I've ever done that, where I've just had a show just out of the box ready to go. Yeah. Normally I'll announce it like a month ahead of time while I'm still working on it.
Sure.
Literally, I didn't get a haircut. I was going to go get a haircut this weekend. But like all Saturday, I was like getting everything ready, getting it all done. So the other thing I didn't do is I didn't pick out an email. So I'm sorry. So I'll try to remember to grab an email to read in the last segment for next week's
mail
episode. Sack. No, I don't think so. Also, be sure to check jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar.
Yes.
Just in case there's any live stream changes for the big show. Normally we're live Sundays at 10 a.m. Pacific over at jblive.tv. But if something comes up, we try to update the calendar so that way you know when to tune in live so you can catch that. So that way you can join us like all these fine people did in our awesome IRC room.
Absolutely.
All right, Matt. Well, I think that just about wraps up this week's episode of the Linux Action Show. We'll see you right back here next week. That's just me checking the stream map. If I see myself being a weirdo over here.
Checking for probes. I was like, oh my God. Not again. Not again.
All right, Matt, here we go.